Okay, hello everyone. Just doing a sound check here. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
And are you able to speak? Let's see. Let's turn on everybody's sound so that they can hear me and speak to me.
Says you're unmuted.
Let's see if
Hey.
you can
you hear
see if this is working well. Trying to unmute everybody here.
Hey, Julie.
All right, is anyone not hearing me okay? Can you let me know if you're hearing me? Someone just tell me if you're hearing me okay.
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Yeah. Can hear you.
I can hear you.
I can hear. Can you hear us?
All right.
Yes.
So Angela, are you hearing any voices besides mine?
Yes, I am. I'm hearing everyone, but not me. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yes.
So if you could listen
you
for
could.
any questions and just let me
Sure.
know what they are. I'm going to look at maybe changing my headset here because maybe
Okay.
it's me and not you, Angela. Let's try this. Hold on a second. Give me just one more minute to change my headset here.
Can you hear me now? No?
Hold on just a minute.
Okay.
Angela, can you hear me now?
I can.
And I can hear
Yes.
you now.
That's
So we're
great.
good. All right.
Okay.
So it was me, not you.
That's okay.
All right. Always glad when that happens. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Julie Zindel with Central Data, and I am the VP of Client Services and Client Engagement here at Central Data. And we're really pleased to be bringing you these webinars to add some value to just some informational webinars on things that maybe you don't know you have in the system, or to add to your education, or just help you with problems that you're having. So today's webinar is a very timely subject. We're talking about supply chain challenges and how to manage some of the settings in your system and some of the functions that you have in your SXE or Cloud Suite system that can help you today with those challenges. So first, before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping here. The first thing I want to tell you is that I will unmute the lines, but if there's too much background noise, we have quite a few attendees today on the call. So if there's too much background noise, we'll just try and mute you for that time period and open it up again. On our last webinar, one of the suggestions is that we leave the lines open so that you can ask questions. So we will try that and see how it works, and we'll hope that you know, at any time you can mute yourself, but we'll try and keep all the lines open. So if you have questions, you can ask them as you think of them. There's also a chat available, so you're welcome to add chat questions as well, and we'll handle them at the end. And just give us feedback. We would really appreciate that. Before we get started, I do want to introduce to you, and are you seeing my PowerPoint screen okay?
Yeah.
All right. So an introduction, first of all, to Angela Rudolph, and you see her on camera here.
Hi.
She helped me prepare this presentation today, and she's actually going to be doing a presentation next month on cross-docking. But Angela joins us with 22 years of experience as an inventory and purchasing manager. She worked in SXE for 15 or so years. And she's joined our consulting team in Q4 of 2021. So you'll be seeing more and more of Angela, and you'll be hearing more from her in the near future. And we just welcome her, and we're really glad she's with us. She works in New Orleans, by the way, so she's a Southern girl.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Thanks, Julie.
Okay, nice to have you, Angela.
Appreciate it.
All right, I'm gonna go off camera here so that I can look at my other screen and not look like I'm cross-eyed here. So I'm gonna turn off my webcam just for a minute. All right, so some of the things we're gonna cover today, just so you know, we're dealing with all kinds of issues in the supply chain. And obviously 2020 and 2021 were both very chaotic, and 2022 is probably going to be the same. We're seeing a lot of issues with disruptions in the chain that are affecting everyone across all global markets. So some of these struggles will, of course, play themselves out in time, but how do we handle the challenges today? How do we keep track of our data so that we know what to order and when we're really going to get it? So our goal here today is to talk about how we can rebuild the chains, how we can plan and budget, and what we can do in the system to help us with our challenging time right now for replenishment and supply chain. All right, so some of the challenges that we have, of course, is port congestion. We've all seen the ships lined up on the sea. So whether you are, ordering from an overseas supplier or you're ordering domestically, you're going to have the same problem because your suppliers are dealing with this as they order from overseas. So we expect that there's going to be bottlenecks at both ends that are going to lead to a longer lead time for both import and export operations. We know that there's raising freight costs as well. So trucking, intermodal transport, the sea and air freight have all skyrocketed to double-digit percentages since 2019. It's a perfect storm of variables, making it difficult to move freight in any capacity, and the costs are constantly rising. Restructuring supply chains. So 2022 will be a year of pivoting as companies are seeking more reliable means of procurement, whether that means reshoring, diversified suppliers, new carrier arrangements. You're going to be leveraging multiple suppliers for a single material. And it's going to be important to strategically align with partners who can control more of the supply chain. We do also have labor or material shortages. I think everyone I've heard from is looking for good people to fill key staffing positions. So that is a challenge for everyone. And that's also driving up our issues in the supply chain because there aren't truckers and there aren't people to offload goods. So we're seeing a lot of shortages across every area. And that also, is going to make you need to adjust your lead times, possibly build some inventory, and again, diversify your suppliers. Inflation, we've all experienced this, even at the grocery store. It's inevitable that an unrelenting demand is exceeding unsustainable supply. So we're going to see higher prices being passed on to the consumers and to you as distributors. I'm sure all of you are dealing with constant cost changes in the system as you're trying to keep your costs updated. The key to keeping cost of goods sold low in 2022 and beyond is an investment in smarter procurement. All right, struggles with demand forecasting. This is an issue that we're all having right now. For example, we have in the past 24 months of forecasting, nothing is reliable. There's been extreme fluctuations in demand and global shutdowns are skewing our data. Supply chain leaders need to lean heavily on trend data to predict the year ahead, while still paying mind to former benchmarks for everything from inventory levels to budgeting and pricing. All right, so here are some tips, and this is where you want to start paying attention to the webinar. Tips to utilize the system to circumvent the supply chain issues. So what can you do in SXE or Cloud Suite distribution to help you with these challenges? Now today, I'm going to be showing the web user interface because I will be working in cloud. So your screens may look different if you're still on a graphical user interface system, a GUI system, but the material is still relevant. And anywhere where there is something new that you wouldn't have in an older version, I'll try and remember to point that out. But for the most part, it's going to be look and feel differences. Okay, so we're going to start with managing lead times. And of course, this is a big topic. When we talk about where lead time is used, it is used in your order point, which is obviously usage times lead time days plus safety stock. It's used also then in your line point because order point is the first calculation in line point. It also will affect things like releases on future orders or blanket releases. Your PO header calculate request date. So if your lead times aren't right on your products, your request date won't come in correctly on your purchase order. It does use the longest lead time of any product on the PO to plug a date into that request date as a default on the header. And there are also areas in the system where we can manipulate our lead times. So I'm going to switch over and show you the system now. So give me just a second to bring it up here. This is my Cloud Suite distribution system. This is SXE in the cloud for those of you who haven't seen it. You'll see my menu on the left here, and I can still use my acronyms to move around in the system like you're used to today. So I will use the acronym just now to go to ICSW, which you're all used to using as warehouse product setup. We're going to start here today, and I'm going to put in a product, and I'm going to use my most recently used to find it quickly for me. But we're talking primarily now about stock products, and we are also looking at products that we order from our ARP vendor, because that's the first rule of lead time updating is the PO has to be coming from your ARP vendor. So that's the first thing. I'm going to switch over to the ordering tab here. And this is where our lead time is being calculated in our order point and our line point. And if I scroll down to where our lead time is, and this also, I'm just going to point out, is an A rank item. So it has a lot of hits, a lot of invoicing detail. All right, so our average lead time is 6 days, but you'll see the last time it was updated, it was in 2019. Now I'm in a demo version of Cloud Suite, so my data is old, but you can see that I have 6-day lead times and 1 day prior. But if I want to actually look at my lead time history, if I drill into it, it's going to default with a date that's in my system right now, but I'm going to go back to 2019 because I saw that that was one of the dates used. First thing you need to know about your lead time history here, if you put 0 in this number of receipts and do a refresh, it'll show you the last 5 receipts of that product. This 4 and 6 defaulted from my ICSR screen, and I'm going to show you that in a minute. But you can put in 0 here, and it will show you the last 5 receipts. So I want to show you that all 5 of these, for example, are ignore lead time based on timeline. Okay, so the lead time is not being updated. We saw an average lead time here of 6 days, where one of these lead times was 64, another was 13, and some were lower as well. And they're all set to ignore lead time. So where is that coming from, and how do you fix it? Let's talk about a couple of things here. I also want to show you that if I turn on direct order lines and I do a refresh, and if I scroll down, oh, nope, maybe not, hold on. Let me change it back to this. I think you'll see that there's one right here, where the ignore lead time is coming from the header. So on your purchase order header, there is a flag to ignore lead time. So if you know there's going to be an exception to your average lead time, you can ignore it by checking that flag either at the header or even on the line of the order. So that's where that ignore lead time at the header is coming from. Without that here, we're just seeing a whole bunch of things where the ignore lead time is based on timeline. So that's coming from your ICSR settings in one case. So I'm going to jump there just to show you what I mean. So this is the product replenishment setup. And if you haven't been using SXE for a long time, or you've never really looked at this area, this may be new to you, but you can set up these rules either by company, by warehouse, by vendor, or by product line. In my case, it's just at the company level, so it's a global setting. And when I drill into it, I can go to my lead time tab here, and I can see that there are rules here about minimum and maximum number of days. So anything more than 30 days is going to be ignored, and anything less than 5 days is going to be ignored. So that's one setting that is affecting it. And then in general, there's also these minimum and maximum percentages here. If it's too low or too high from your average lead time, it's going to ignore it as well. All right, so how do you fix it, and how do you get your lead times to update? I'm going to go back over to my warehouse product setup for a minute, and I'm just going to go back one screen and show you that there is a place here where you can freeze your current average lead time. So for those of you who are not sure, the average lead time is updated every time you do a receipt. It averages the last and the current and puts the new average lead time in. If I wanted to have this not ever change, I can put 999 in this field, and that will be frozen forever. So one way that you can control your average lead times right now to deal with the excessive delays and so forth is to put in what you want this to be. So I could put in a 30-day here, and I could say 999, and if I saved it, it would stay at 999 until I, as the buyer, came back and changed it again. So that's one way to control it with a freeze. The other thing that you can do, which is probably more useful right now, is to put in a number that you don't want it to go below. So you can say 60 days here, and even if the product comes in less than 60 days, it's going to use 60 days in your average lead time calculation, and it's going to use that for your order point and so forth. So for a period of time, you could control it to say, don't go below this number, but it would let it go higher. So it's probably safer to use this field right now so that you can control the low end, but still let it go higher if higher is the truth. Okay. All right, so let me drill back into my lead time history here. And how do you fix a situation where you have a lead time that's been ignored and now you want it to recalculate? And hopefully you all know how to do this, but I'm going to go through it just in case someone is not sure. So let's say I don't want to ignore this 64 days. I can do a recalculate lead time here, and I just want to show you that there is also an update to lead time on PO lines here. Notice I had to click the 3 dots to get to it. If I were to collapse this side of the window, it shows clearly on my screen, right? So don't forget to look for those opportunities for other things in your 3 dots for more in case you have your screen shortened in any way. But here's where I can do my recalculate lead time. And it's going to say lead time is 64. Do you want to continue? I'm going to say yes, right? So here's my calculated lead time, right? So I can go in and I can fix things, and it says current lead time is 6, but my calculated average lead time is now 64 because I used that number of days. I can uncheck this one and do it again, and I can see what my new, now it's going to go to 39. So I can fix those where there has been an ignore and it shouldn't have been, because our lead times really are so far out of whack that they're above the maximum. All right. It's very important that you watch these things not only on the ICSW record, but in your ICAMU, your exception management screen. And you could go here daily if you need to. And you'll see on the left-hand side in your exception selection, you can see that there is, all kinds of things here where we can see, frozen products with hits, order as needed with hits, and also low usage, corrected, exceptional usage. So there's all kinds of things here that you should be looking at, and any lead time exceptions will come here following ICAM, provided you have your ICAM reports coming to review rather than print. So you will see them in your exception center, and you can go drill in and fix them from there as well. All right. So lead times are the most important thing to keep up with. I recently heard Grant Howard say that right now he's recommending a freeze of 60 days, 6 months rather, on lead times, because no one can predict what the lead times are going to be right now. Okay, that's one area that we wanted to cover. Let's go back to the PowerPoint quickly here, if I can find it. There it is. And I will play again. All right, so we talked about managing lead times. The next thing we're going to talk about is utilizing threshold minimums. Your threshold minimum is an area where you can override your order point. Again, order point is reliant on lead time. So you may want to bump up that threshold minimum to advise you to order before you get down to order point, just as an extra buffer. That is done in the system in ICSW, again, in your warehouse product setup. And I'll just go to any screen here. And if I drill into a product, and again, these are your stock products, your products that are worthy of replenishing. That's where we're looking at doing this right now. And if I scroll down, you'll see there is a threshold minimum in the order point adjusters. So here you could say, I know that my order point is, what is it now? It is 23. But I want to be told when I get down to, I went by it. Okay, when I get down to maybe 35, I want that to be my order point, and I'm going to say, longer lead times as my reason. And I'm going to put an expiration date on it to make sure that I don't just leave it out here forever, right? But that maybe I want to keep it out there till the end of July. Okay, so I'm going to save it. And now if I look at that product again, let it complete saving, get to my order point. I didn't recalculate, but I could recalculate it, and then it would say 35 in my order point here, and it would tell me that my raw order point was 23, and my order point adjustment reason would be threshold minimum. All right, so that's another thing you can do just to give you a little bit of a buffer. Okay, all right, let's go on to the next topic. I can just get this working better for me, sorry. There we go, every time I go back, I have to redo that. Review order as needed products for hits. You may be having some products that you have set up as order as needed products. It might be time to increase your inventory availability so that you have product available, and maybe change those to stock for the present time and actually have it part of your replenishment if you order for more than one customer. I would say that is an important factor here. So if you find that you have a product that's order as needed, but you sell it to multiple customers, a good idea might be to change that to stock for a period of time. All right, shopping and storing alternate vendors. As I said, you may normally buy from an overseas supplier, but you know that there are, master distributors or other people you can buy from domestically. It's important that you put that information in the system now, because you really need to know who your alternate suppliers are. And it's not always about price now. Right now, it can be more about lead time than price. So you want to know if you have an alternate. So let's look at where we set up alternate vendors and where they appear. So there is a cross-reference area. It's inventory control, setup, extended cross-references, ICSEC. And if you haven't looked at this recently, you might not realize that there is a tab here for vendor, right? So here is where you would put in your product, who is the product, what's the product that I'm setting this up for. And I can go to vendor here and, oops, sorry, and put in my product again. I did it backwards, sorry. I've got data set up specifically for this, so forgive me. All right, so this is the alternate vendor. So Dynabraid is my actual ARP vendor, but I can also get this from RealCraft. I'm just pretending on this dummy part. But right here, I can see the lead time. I actually personalized my screen to bring the lead time over in the list because that's more important to me than anything else. But notice if I scroll over, I can get more information from here as well, right? So I see price and so forth, but for me, that lead time is critical. And if I drill in here, this is where you would put in the vendor part number and so forth. If the vendor has a different description, you can put that in here as well. You can put in, their standard pack could be different, but lead time is here. So this is in this warehouse for this vendor, their lead time could be different than your ARP vendor. So it's a good place to store it. Where do you see that information? Even in an inquiry screen like ICIP, your product inquiry. If I bring up that product, you'll see that in the cross-reference area, here's my vendor, and I should have personalized this screen as well, but my lead time is over here, so I can see my lead time and price for this vendor. You can have as many alternate vendors as you need to set up here. Remember, when you receive a PO from your alternate vendor, it's not going to update lead time, right? Because it's not your ARP vendor, but you can see that here in the in your inquiry screen. You can also see it if you choose to on the RAR merge report. So there is an AO option for that, just so you know. If you want to see whenever you merge, whether you could have ordered from a substitute vendor, an alternate vendor, you can come into replenishment here, and it's this flag right here to print. Oh, I'm sorry, that's surplus not taken. I'm ahead of myself. We're going to get to this one in a minute. Sorry, I'm ahead of myself in my notes. So surplus not taken, you can print on your merge report. So keep that in mind for just a minute from now. All right, so on your RAR report, that's where I should have taken you. There is an option about whether you want to print alternate vendors. And likewise, you would see it in your messages. So if I go here to my details of my options right here, print alternate vendors can be set to yes or no. And on this as well, you can say print substitutes and supersedes, yes or no. So those, if we're going to be looking for alternate vendors, and what we're going to talk about next is alternate products that could be a replacement for this product that we can't get, you could have it print to your RAR and it will show up either on the printed version or it will show up in your demand center in the messages. Okay. All right, let me get back to my PowerPoint because I got ahead of myself. Sorry about that. All right. And we are next to product substitutions in the system. There are multiple substitute options in the system that you can set up also in your cross-reference setup screen. One is a substitute, which means it's a direct replacement. If we're out of this product, you can directly replace it with this product. It might be, a slight color or size difference or something, but the product is substitutable as a direct replacement. And the other option is an upgrade. So you have both of those available. And again, they both show in ICIP, the product inquiry screen under the cross references, or you can see it on your RAR if you had set that option to print substitutes and supersedes. All right, so let me show you where that setup is done. ICSEC, again, your extended product cross-reference. And here you can say by product, let's see which product I want to use because I have one set up. Same one, okay. And if I drop down here, you can see all the different options, but two of them that I'm talking about today are substitute, that's a direct replacement, or an upgrade, meaning it's going to cost them a little bit more, it has more features, it might be the next level up, but it is a replacement for the part they want. So as you're thinking about how you would use this, be sure to train your customer service reps or your salespeople to look for these options. So if you're out of stock, they don't just turn the customer away, but rather they offer either a substitute or an upgrade. So if we do a look here, you can see that this is, the next level up. It's a 3/4 horsepower instead of whatever the other one was. So just, it's an upgraded version, may cost a little more, but at least you can supply the customer with a product, right? So keep those in mind as well. And again, you would see that in your inquiry screens as well for your cross references. All right, the next big topic that we want to talk about today is managing your surplus across the enterprise. So for example, we have, inventory at multiple warehouses, and some may have more than they need. So rather than creating a purchase order where you're waiting and you don't have, lead times yet, it's going to be a while before you can get it, look to see if there's any surplus, either short-term or long-term, at any of your other locations, and see if it makes sense to either sell out of that warehouse if you allow that, or transfer it to your location and sell it out of your warehouse. So how do you see surplus across the enterprise? Let's look at that next. So if I'm in a product availability screen, ICIA, product availability inquiry, and I put in any product, if I go to warehouse availability, and again, you can see I have multiple warehouses, I can see both long-term and short-term surplus. It's typically a good rule of thumb to look for their long-term surplus because they've had it above and beyond the length of time that they need it. A short-term surplus might mean they just received something. You certainly don't want to hurt your other locations. You want to make sure that you're taking surplus and, do the right thing and ask the branch manager if you can take it. But rather than creating a PO, create a warehouse transfer or sell direct on a warehouse transfer to your customer so that they're taken care of and surplus is reduced. This should be rule of thumb for everyone to know. As soon as you see that you don't have availability, you have nothing to sell, you're doing an inquiry, the first thing you should do is look to see if you have availability in another warehouse. You can see what you have on hand now, obviously, and what you're available to sell is right now, and what is on order coming in either on a PO or a transfer. But you can see quickly, short-term, long-term surplus and so forth. So you can You can look through the warehouses and make sure that you're distributing your inventory across all warehouse locations. All right, next. Let's get to the next area. So we covered lead times, threshold minimums, order points that are being sold to multiple customers, alternate vendors, alternate product solutions, level setting our inventory across all warehouses. The next one is called managing PO acknowledgements. Right now, your expediters have a very tough time. They are calling your vendors, they're getting dates from the vendors, and it's constantly changing. They're told it'll be another 30 days. 30 days go by, they call again, and it's still not there. They have to call again and get a new date. How do you let your customer service reps know that you've gotten an acknowledged date that is probably correct? And again, no one knows for sure about anything, but it's really hard when your customer service person is looking and seeing the PO is due 2 weeks ago and you still don't have an update, right? This is a good way to let them know you do have an update and you can do it in the system. So this is a purchase order acknowledgement. You can do it at a manual level if you don't use ASNs, and it is PO EA. So it's a manual acknowledgement entry. So I can put in a purchase order here. I have one that I'm going to use. So let me see what the number is. Hold on just a second. If I could read it. There is a search out here. So maybe I'll just do that. I'll just do a search and see what I have out here. And I want to look for anything that's in printed stage. So I'm using criteria here. And I want to do by stage code, and I want to do printed stage. So I'm going to look for POs that are printed. And again, I could look for, any that were for a specific vendor and so forth, but I'll just pick a PO here. And when I do a search, I can come in here and I can select that order, and I can come up and I can click acknowledge, put in an acknowledged reason. And it could be a reason that you establish so they know, yes, this is the definite one. This is the real lead. Really, it's acknowledged now. So it might be confirm, you might use that as your acknowledgement reason and say, okay. And when I do a final update, let me just write down that PO number so I don't miss it here, 487. When I do my final update, when I look at it in an inquiry now, you'll notice that it is now in a stage called acknowledged, okay? What happens if next week that PO didn't come in? How do you tell them, well, it's not acknowledged anymore. Now we need to go in and fix that. You can go back to that EA screen. And if I put in that same purchase order, I have to say that it's acknowledged now, sorry. I can come into it and I can select it again and I can reset to print. So, and I do a final update. Now it's gone back to printed stage. So it's no longer acknowledged with the date updated that I would have updated on the header of that purchase order. So that is a good way of saying it's acknowledged. We have a firm date from the vendor to help your customer service reps know what products are coming in. Okay. And all right, so that was that. And the last thing we have is updating the demand exceptions on a daily, monthly basis. And that was your ICAMU screen with especially with two areas in particular, lead times and out of stock situations where you've been out of stock for more than 15 days. So if you don't have a product, you can't sell it. So you would want to go in and maybe, update the usage or make sure that you're thinking about what you could have sold if you had the product, so that going forward, all of your data is good. Review with your vendor for direct buying opportunities. If you can ship direct, that might help in some cases to expedite your lead times and so forth. So that's another area maybe where you can help your customers. Besides keeping extra inventory on your shelf, you might be able to drop ship directly from the vendor. And there is a new option on the RAR report as of the November 2021 release. Now, this one is only in Cloud Suite. For those of you who are live on Cloud Suite, you get your updates each month. And this was a new feature that came in the November release. So a lot of people probably haven't even known that it's there and don't know what it is. So I'm going to explain that a little bit. So there is a new option on the RAR. It's number 16 on the RAR, where you can exclude due days greater or equal to. So currently in your RAR report and your transfer report, it's been added to both. The report does not include products where you have an on order amount. So typically what happens is your product warehouse setup on order amount is subtracted from the demand when determining if a product qualifies for replenishment. So that's your purchasing net available. So the on order balance is the quantity that has been placed on order with a vendor or with another warehouse. That's your on order quantity. So this enhancement allows you to specify a number of days in the exclude due days greater than or equal to area. It's number 16 on the report. For any purchase orders or transfers with a due date greater than or equal to the current date, plus the number of days you specified in that field. So this is on your replenishment report. It's also on your merge report, where you can put this exclude due days greater than or equal to. So why would you want to do this? Basically, if you've got goods on order from overseas and they're not coming in, you might want to eliminate that on order quantity for a period of time, a certain number of days, so that you can see what you have to order if those parts don't come in. So it does give you the option to, reallocate, maybe find a different supplier, or at least know that, what local sources can maybe fill your current demand if those parts don't come in. So let me show you that area on the RAR. And it's also, again, on the merge report and on the transfer replenishment report. And again, this is only in Cloud Suite, because if you're on an older version or on Web UI on-premise, you don't have updates every month. So you wouldn't have gotten this in November. But this is the option right here, exclude due days greater than or equal to. And that will take anything that's due after that number of days from today out of your on order quantity. Okay. All right, lots of things I said there. Let's see what kind of comments or questions might be coming in. Let me just look and see if there's anything in our chat. I do not see anything at the current time. Let's see if, let's open up everybody's line here. Are there any questions from anyone so far? Oh goodness, can I unmute everybody at once? Let's try that.
I do have a question.
Okay. Whoops. Hello? Did I mute you again? Oh dear.
Hi there. This is
Oh.
Kim with Dealer Shop. I do have a question.
Okay, Kim, go ahead.
You stated for the PO acknowledgements that you could update the date and that will update the header. Will that also update the line items or just the PO header?
Just the header, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you go into your purchase order entry and you're maintaining any PO, right? The dates that you have are the requested ship date, expected ship date, the due date, and so yeah, it's going to do it at the header level. You'd have to go into the line to update each line if the lines were different.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Now, for anyone who has ASNs coming in through EDI, it may work differently, but for the manual, it only updates the header. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. This is Penny from Shore. You had mentioned on the lead times, if your lead times are not froze, the system picks up the longest lead time from your average lead times to put on the for your purchase order date.
Yes, that's what defaults in your date in standard, yes.
So it doesn't really use the average, it uses the longest?
No, it looks for all the products that you have, and it uses the longest average lead time of those products.
Okay.
So if you have two products and one has 10 days and one has 15, it's going to
Yep.
use 15 at the header.
Okay.
Oh, and
And
by the
then,
way, lead time includes weekends. I don't know if you all know that, but it does include weekend days.
okay. Then one more question regarding lead times. You had mentioned that when you go into when you review your lead times, that you can update and you do your refresh, you can update the lead times on the existing purchase orders. Is that correct?
You can, it may not be in your version, Penny, because
Okay.
you're on premise still. But if you're in the cloud, yes, you do get that option on your screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that if you're not seeing it, that's because you're on an older version.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Good questions. Anything else? Does anyone want to share any insight that they might have had recently on how they're managing their issues with lead times or supply chain? Anyone else have any other suggestions?
Hi, I have a question. I'm Jesus from Wholesale Electric.
Hello, Jesus.
Hi. We recently adapted the central distribution center. This is the first time we have one. Before we have only stores, and we receive all the inventory to the central distribution center, and we distribute by transfer to the other locations. And right now we are using standard cost, and the standard cost is most used about we need always to update manually.
Right.
Can someone share what they are using right now for the sales to see on the system? How they update the cost or what they use? They use average or they use other options?
Sure. This is what you're talking about, Jesus. I'm showing it on my screen. I think you can see it okay in your AO options. So what sales would see would be your markup up from cost. So they could see average, standard, replacement, or last. Average average and last are the two that update automatically. Everything else is manual, either standard or replacement are manual updates. So your question is, what do other people use as the costs that their salespeople see?
Yes. I want to know if other people use always average or they use standard cost too, and if someone use standard cost, how they update it every time.
Does anyone want to share? Or maybe you're not sure. So I'll just mention that average is what's typically used because it does update, but with all the changes in the supply chain and the costs and everything, those costs are changing every day, right? So there is another field here about how you handle your margins. You know, how do you post to sales manager? You know, so your margins could post by a different cost. And then, of course, whether or not you use add-ons also plays into this. But I think this is something everyone is struggling with right now, Jesus, because they're constantly changing their costs.
Don't worry, thank you. We are doing it every day with mass maintain. So every time the central distribution center receive inventory, we just do a mass maintain. But thank you very much.
Yep. Understood. Because there's a lot of additional costs now in your products, right? The freight costs are up, duties are up, everything's up.
It's changing everything, yes.
Every day, yeah. Every buyer right now and every inventory manager and supply chain manager has a huge burden on them to keep all the costs updated and still get product in. It is a real problem for everyone. Okay. So do we have any more questions or any other comments anyone would like to make?
Hey, Julie, this is Donna with Alsco Industrial.
Hi, Donna.
How are you?
Good, thanks.
I have a question about back in the beginning when you were manipulating the lead times.
Mm-hmm.
I need to know if we can manipulate this by vendor and not just by the product. Whole entire vendor line.
There might be a way with mass maintenance, Donna. I'd have to look at the options there. But that typically it's a product by product level. But if you have mass maintenance, you may be able to do it that way.
Okay. I'll have to check into it then, because our problem is, you know, it would take me days to go product by product to manipulate the lead times, and I would like to be able to do it for the whole entire vendor.
Right, and you're talking about setting it as a don't let it go below date, or as a, you know, freeze it at 60 days or something like that across the whole product line?
Yes.
Okay.
You could also do that in mass maintenance as well. If you do an export of the items that you want to change, you can also load that back in to mass maintenance for what you want it by product.
By vendor too, Angela?
I'm not sure about vendor, like you said, but I know, you know, we used to do it by item in mass maintenance because most of the items were different. But if they were all the same, we would go ahead and do a mass maintenance to change them. Because like she said, you can't do it manually. It's way too much.
Way too much, yeah. The way it's changing too, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm not familiar. I don't know about by vendor, though. That's something I'd like to know myself, do a little research on.
Okay, so we made note of that, Donna, and we'll get back to you with an answer on that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else before we end today? All right, well, thank you so much, everyone. This was a very well-attended webinar, so I hope you got value out of it. There will be a recording sent out to you following today's session. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact myself or Angela at Central Data. We'll be happy to get back to you with answers if there's additional questions. And as always, thank you for your business and thank you for attending today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, have a good day, everyone.
You too.
You too.
You too, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.